The flame blood bond Kale had been to uncharted moons before, but none that smelled like this. The air on Phenine carried a scent of sulfur rain and something wild beneath the surface. His boots sank slightly into the moss-covered ridge as he adjusted, the scope on his half-cracked visor. Mist rolled up from the valley below, tinted orange by the twin suns as they dipped toward the horizon. He was alone, as usual. Cartography was meant to be precise, quiet work, drifting from sector to sector, with old maps and older tech, documenting gravitational shifts and atmospheric changes for people who would never step foot in places like this. Kale preferred it that way. The solitude, the silence, no politics, no command structures, no one to answer to but a ticking nav clock and an overworked scanner. But this world wasn't empty like he'd been promised. Not entirely. He stopped at a rise overlooking a narrow gorge. The scanner pinged, faint energy traces buried deep. Beneath that was a flicker of heat, rhythmic like breath. "That's new," Kale muttered, tapping the screen. "And warmer, too. Too warm for a rock this dead." He knelt, brushing back a patch of moss to reveal black stone carved with faint lines. Circular patterns, aged smooth by time. His eyes narrowed. This wasn't natural. Behind him, the forest made a sound. A branch snapped. Not a fall, not a breeze. Something moved. He stood slowly, hand going to the compact pulse pistol on his belt. He didn't draw yet. Another rustle. Kale turned fully, muscles tensed, and then something slammed into him from the tree line. Claws extended, weight powerful, scent overwhelming. He didn't see her face at first, only fur, heat, and the sensation of being claimed. Then her voice, low and guttural, spoke the word that would undo everything he thought he knew. "Mine!" Kale hit the earth with a grunt. The breath knocked clean out of his lungs as he crashed through a patch of underbrush and slid directly into a pool of shallow steaming water. Heat engulfed him, not scalding but definitely not gentle. It soaked his gear instantly, frying the exposed ports on his scanner with a sharp hiss. But none of that mattered. What did matter was the weight pressing down on his chest, strong, warm, and furry. He blinked against the mist rising around them, his goggles fogging, his muscles too stunned to react as his attacker straddled him, claws pinning his shoulders, into the mud. Her fur, orange streaked with darker tones like ember-scorched wood, clung wetly to her frame. Ears twitched above her head, and golden eyes locked onto his with laser focus. Her face was striking, feminine but wild, lined with delicate russet markings. A narrow snout, soft lips, a sharp jaw. Her tail, thick and bushy, curled behind her. In the steam like a living flame, she was breathing heavily, nose twitching. Then, without warning, she leaned in so close he could feel her breath on his neck, and she sniffed him once, deeply, from the base of his jaw to the collar of his drenched jacket. Kale choked out, one arm twitching under her grip. "I think there's been a mistake." "You smell right," she growled, her voice low, velvety and guttural. Her ears flicked in interest. "Your scent, it calls." Kale squirmed. "Lady, I don't know what kind of phenomenal misunderstanding is happening here, but I can promise you I'm not chosen," she cut in. The word hit him like a spike through the spine. "Wait, chosen for what exactly?" he said, pushing against her with a little more urgency now. Her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked more satisfied. Her claws retracted slightly, and she leaned back just enough for him to see her full form. She was stunning, powerful, humanoid, yes, but with fur covering every inch of her toned body and curves that were hard not to notice under the sheen of steam and water. She cocked her head as if confused that he didn't understand. "You're my mate," she said plainly. Kale's mouth fell open. "You're what now?" Behind her, more rustling, movement in the mist, shapes emerging from the trees. Tall, lean figures with fur of varying shades and glowing eyes of gold and green. The same build, the same sharpness, the same species. Kale's stomach dropped. His pulse kicked up. She wasn't alone, and apparently, neither was he anymore. Kale was no stranger to first contact. He'd cataloged silent ruins on desolate moons, transmitted beacon pings to half-buried exoskeletons, even traded nods with the silicon-based species once in a neutral port. But nothing had prepared him for being declared someone's mate by a drenched Vulpine woman and then surrounded by a pack of her kin. The others emerged from the fog without weapons, but with a clear air of intent. Tall, graceful forms padded silently across the moss, circling. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, not menacing but watchful, curious. He counted at least 8. Some wore leathers stitched from hide and bone, others simple robes of woven root fiber. Kale shifted, sitting up slowly as the orange-furred one finally stepped off of him. Though she never moved far, she stayed within arm's reach, close enough to grab him again if he bolted, which was tempting. She turned and barked, a sharp phrase in a language he couldn't decipher, rhythmic, sharp-edged, filled with rising snarls and soft vowels. One of the larger males stepped forward, fur the color of smoldering coal with a long scar across his collarbone. He sniffed the air, then rumbled something back. The orange-furred woman looked down at Kale. "You come now," he blinked. "Wait, hold on, you want me to… what?" She didn't repeat herself. She reached down, grabbed him by the wrist, not hard but firm, and began walking toward the trees. The rest followed. Kale looked back at the steaming pool where his scanner still floated, half-fried and bubbling. "I am way underpaid for this," he muttered, stumbling after her as the forest swallowed him whole. The walk wasn't long, but it was surreal. Glowing moss lit the way along the roots, and high above, fireflies drifted like embers in slow orbit. Veins of bioluminescence pulsed beneath the bark of trees that looked older than most civilizations he knew. It felt alive. All of it. And then the village came into view. He stepped into a clearing carved between giant, ancient trunks. Homes were built into the trees themselves, spiraling upward like woven nests, with fire pits floating on platforms, suspended by braided vines. The scent of roasting meat and sweet roots hung in the air. Children, smaller versions of the Vulpine species, dashed between archways of bone and bark, giggling in their throaty, growling language. Kale slowed, eyes wide. He wasn't in a camp. He was in a civilization. The orange-furred woman led him to a central platform draped in glowing silk-like strands. She motioned for him to sit, then crouched opposite him, her tail curled neatly around her ankles. The others gathered in a loose ring, murmuring among themselves. Then, from the far side of the fire, an elder stepped forward. His fur was pale gray, almost white, and he wore a mantle of feathers and fossilized stone. His eyes were sharp as obsidian, and his expression gave nothing away. He raised one clawed hand. "She claimed you," he said in perfect trade tongue. Kale stared. The elder stepped closer. "Do you understand what that means, Skyborn?" Kale opened his mouth, then closed it again, then finally managed. "Not even slightly." The elder studied Kale for a long moment, then slowly seated himself beside the fire. He moved like roots stretching through soil, ancient, sure, and unbothered by time. The circle of Vulpine watchers tightened, their murmurs fading into silence. All eyes were now on Kale. The orange-furred woman sat closer to him than before, protective or possessive. Kale shifted uneasily, his wet clothes clinging to his skin. His wrist still tingled where she had grabbed it. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I think there's been some confusion. I'm not here for any kind of ritual. I'm a mapmaker, a contractor, a visitor. I'm not even staying. I'm just…" "You are marked," the elder said flatly. Kale blinked. "Marked by what?" The old Vulpine's tail slowly swept across the ground. "By the veil." A few low growls of agreement rippled through the gathered pack. The orange-furred woman didn't speak. She just stared at him, ears twitching, golden eyes unblinking. "I don't even know her name," Kale said, gesturing helplessly. "She tackled me into a hot spring and sniffed me like a spice rack." "My name is Vela," the woman said quietly, her voice smoother now. "You are Kale." He froze. "How do you…" "I heard it from your mouth. You said it, half unconscious." She had a point. The elder lifted a hand to silence them both. "When a flame Blood female bonds with one who is not of the veil, it is rare. But it has happened. And when it does, it is not by accident. The bond is chosen by the fire beneath the land. I'm not from this land, Kale snapped, standing abruptly. I'm not bonded. I'm not chosen. I'm not some ancient prophecy coming to life. Vela rose with him. Her presence was quiet but intense. But you didn't run. Because I didn't know what was happening, he shouted. The elder stood as well, his voice calm despite the tension. The scent tells truths even fear cannot hide. Kale turned in a slow circle, watching all the faces around him. Some sympathetic, some skeptical, most just curious. I didn't come here to be claimed, he said. I came here to finish a scan, log a map entry, and leave. Vela stepped closer. Her claws didn't extend, but her tail lifted. You came here to be alone, she said. But you are not. Kale stared at her, breath stuck in his throat. There was no trick in her voice, no trap, just certainty. The elder gestured to the fire. Stay for a cycle of the moon. Learn. If the bond is false, it will fade. If it is real, it will burn brighter. And if I say no, Kale asked. You may leave, but the severing will scar you both. Kale sat down hard, exhausted and overwhelmed. A whole damn moon, he muttered. This is going to ruin my contract rating. Vela sat beside him. She said nothing, but her tail curled once around his ankle. Not tightly, just enough to say, I'm here. Kale didn't sleep much that night. They gave him a den, small, half-carved into the roots of a massive tree, insulated with thick furs and leaves that smelled faintly of crushed herbs and smoke. The ceiling glowed softly with pale fungal light, casting ripples across the curved walls like starlight seen through water, but it wasn't comfort that kept him awake. It was everything else. The scent of Vela still clung to his clothes. Earthy, warm, tinged with something wild and sweet. He'd never smelled anything like it before, somewhere between memory and instinct, and it wouldn't leave him alone. He tossed, on the bedding, face buried in his arm. This is insane, he muttered. A week ago I was charting rock formations. Now I'm being scented by a sentient foxwoman. From outside came the soft murmur of night wind through high branches, the whisper of distant fire, occasional chirps or padded steps. No one came to his den, not even Vela. But he felt her somewhere, not far off. She was awake, watching, not stalking, not waiting to pounce, just present, and it wasn't menacing. If anything, it was grounding. That was the most terrifying part. By morning, Kale had bags under his eyes and zero answers. He stepped out of the den to find Vela crouched nearby, idly sharpening a blade on a flat stone. She looked up as he emerged. Her ears twitched, and her gaze swept him once from head to toe. You didn't sleep. Kale scowled. You're watching me now. I felt you. That's not creepy at all, he muttered. She stood, slinging the blade across her back with practiced. You'll get used to it. To being what? Claimed? Vela's eyes narrowed slightly. Not claimed, chosen. Those words sound awfully similar. They're not. She stepped closer, but not too close. A claim is taken. A choice is offered. Kale stared at her. And if I choose to leave? Then you do, she said, ears flicking. But your scent won't vanish. Not for me. Maybe not for you either. Kale sighed, rubbing his eyes. I'm not ready for this. Good, Vela said simply, turning and walking away. If you were, it wouldn't be real. Kale spent the next few days learning what it meant to walk among the flame blood. He wasn't treated as a prisoner, nor was he treated as an equal. He was something in between, an outsider under observation, a curiosity the wind had dropped into their midst. They didn't fear him, but they didn't trust him either. Not yet. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. Young ones peered from behind woven hut flaps. Elders squinted with measured disapproval. Warriors, lean and quiet, sniffed the air subtly when he passed, their golden or green eyes tracking his every move. Vela didn't hover. She simply appeared, always when he needed her, never when he didn't. She brought him food once, grilled, meat from some creature with 6 legs and a sweet, nutty aftertaste. He nearly refused it on principle, but she placed it gently beside him and walked away without a word. He ate it all. Later, she found him crouched beside a rope bridge, watching. 2 flame-blood kids chase each other through the high boughs like fire through the treetops. "You're learning," she said softly, crouching beside him. "I'm watching," Kale corrected. "There's a difference." "You're not running." He sighed, brushing moss from his boots. "Because I know if I did, you'd outrun me." She chuckled, a soft, surprisingly light sound that ruffled the silence around them. "True." He studied her out of the corner of his eye. The sunlight that pierced the treetops dappled across her orange fur, making it glow like living flame. Her profile was noble, sharp cheekbones, narrow snout, a streak of darker fur that curved from her ear to her jawline like war paint. "You really believe in this bond, don't you?" he asked. "I feel it," she said simply. "It's not belief. It's like scent or breath. It just is." Kale leaned back against the root. "Where I'm from, bonds aren't instinct. They're decisions, earned, thought through." Vela turned toward him, her tail slowly swaying behind her. Then, "Let me earn it," he blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I won't press," she said. "I won't take. But I will stay, and you'll see." Kale swallowed hard. He couldn't argue with that, so he didn't. Instead, he muttered, "This is going to be complicated." Vela smiled faintly. "The best things are." The next time Kale awoke in his den, he found a bundle waiting beside the fire pit. Not food, not tools. Clothing. Crafted from finely woven bark fiber and animal hide. The garments had a wild elegance to them, stitched with precision, reinforced where needed, and dyed in the warm rust and ash tones of the veil itself. Folded on top was a sash threaded with silver leaves and a single carved tooth, long, polished, and ancient. Kale touched it gently, then looked up as Vela entered without a sound. "You made this?" "I guided the weaver," she replied, her tone even. "The sash is for guests who step into right grounds. It shows you're protected." He looked at her. "Protected from who?" Her eyes darkened slightly. "From those who challenge the bond." Kale stood slowly. "There's more of those?" She crossed the room and adjusted the sash slightly on his shoulder, her claws brushing his collarbone. Her touch was light, careful, but lingering. "The bond isn't declared alone. It must be witnessed. A trial of place and presence. It was meant to be done moons ago, but you were still deciding." "And now?" he asked, voice quiet. Now they ask questions. Her tail twitched behind her. "Some don't like the idea of a skyborn at my side." Kale pulled the shirt over his head, tucking the sash across his chest. "So I'm walking into a political firestorm?" "You already did," she said dryly. "This is just the part where they try to smell if it's real." He raised an eyebrow. "Smell?" Vela's ears twitched. "You'll see." Later that day, Kale followed Vela through a clearing filled with low fog and softly burning fire pits. They passed, under woven bone arches, into a wide arena, natural, ringed by carved stones, roots, and sitting logs. At least 30 flame-blood had gathered, most standing, some perched in trees above, silent and still. The elder waited at the center. So did someone else. Kale's gaze locked onto the challenger instantly. Tall, ash-furred, heavily scarred across, his jaw and glaring directly at him. Vela stopped. Her voice was ice. "His name is Drek, and he thinks I should have bonded with him." Kale's gut sank. "Wonderful," he muttered. "An angry ex with claws." Vela bared her teeth. "No, worse. He's a traditionalist." The arena was silent, but the tension pressed in like a coiled spring. Drek stood at the far edge, towering, his fur mottled with scar patterns and bone piercings clinking as he turned. His eyes never left Kale, narrowed, simmering, unreadable. Behind him stood three others, younger, leaner, but mimicking his, posture like apprentices waiting for their cue to pounce. Kale swallowed hard. So what exactly happens here? Vela stepped beside him, her tone curt. You stand. You face him. You say nothing unless spoken to, and you do not flinch. I can do that, Kale said slowly, watching Drek's claws flex. Also, she added dryly, don't die. Kale stiffened. That was not in the brief. The elder raised both hands as he stepped into the center, his voice rising above the murmurs. Flame blood does not bond in shadow. A choice must be shown, witnessed, defended, if challenged. He turned toward Kale, gesturing. Outsider, skyborn, you stand here by fire and scent. Do you still stand? Kale stepped forward, his boots pressed into the ash-ringed soil. Every eye turned to him. I do, he said, his voice clearer than he expected. The elder nodded. Then let the fire test your spine. Drek stepped forward, tail low, claws extended, not to fight, but to prove. He began circling Kale like a predator, inhaling deeply, letting out low rumbling sounds Kale couldn't decipher. He's scent-matching you, Vela whispered nearby. Scent-matching? If you're faking the bond, she murmured. He'll know. Kale tried not to move, not to sweat, which was hard because Drek's presence was overwhelming. All fury, challenge, and heat. Kale could feel it like a storm building in his chest. Then Drek leaned in, nose against Kale's neck. Kale flinched. Wrong. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Vela growled low in her throat. Drek pulled back, smirking. He flinched, he declared. The bond is weak. Kale's jaw clenched. I'm not a damn animal to be sniffed. Drek turned to the elder. He is not one of us. He is not worthy. The elder didn't move. His gaze was sharp but unreadable. Then Vela stepped forward between them. Her voice rang out like a drawn blade. Then challenge me. Drek paused. What? You say the bond is false, she growled, tail raised. Then challenge me or stand down and admit you fear what you cannot break. A ripple of noise spread through the crowd, half shock, half approval. Kale blinked. Wait, you're challenging him? She looked at him once over her shoulder, eyes blazing. You're mine. I choose, not him. Drek's lip curled. Then bleed for him. Vela bared her teeth. I'll make you wish I had. The moment Vela stepped into the circle, the entire veil seemed to hold its breath. Her stance was composed yet coiled, like the moment before a lightning strike. Her orange fur shimmered in the low firelight, tail lashing once behind her. Kale had seen her move before, swift, graceful. But now she was something else entirely. Drek stepped in with deliberate arrogance, his claws unsheathed, his expression full of certainty. He towered over her by a head and a half, muscles rippling beneath his soot-colored pelt. No claws, the elder announced. No weapons, only form and will. Both combatants nodded once. Then the elder dropped his hand. The fight began. Drek lunged immediately, brute force in motion. He aimed high, intending to overpower her with one swift grapple. Vela dipped low, spinning on her heel with a sweeping kick that nearly caught his leg, but he was too fast. He jumped back, eyes narrowing. The crowd circled tighter, murmuring with growing excitement. Kale watched, heart pounding. He wanted to shout, to warn her, to step in. But she'd already made it clear this was her fight. Drek struck again, this time with more restraint. Jab, pivot, jab. His form was practiced, old, ritualized. Vela countered with unpredictability. She flowed like fire, every movement deceptive. Her smaller frame darted in and out, scoring hits where he couldn't react in time. He roared as she landed a hard elbow to his ribs, staggering him. You fight like a scavenger, Drek spat, clutching his side. I fight like someone who doesn't want. You near him, she growled, and drove her shoulder into his gut, sending him crashing into the ash. The crowd erupted. Howls, roars, claws clicking against stone. But Drek wasn't finished. He sprang back up with a growl, tackled her mid-step, and the two tumbled through the ring, a storm of fur and fury. They hit the dirt hard, rolling, fists and knees flying. Kale winced as Vela took a sharp hit to the shoulder, but she didn't falter. Instead, she grinned. She drove her knee into his side, flipped over his body, and slammed both palms down on his chest with a shout. Drek let out a gasp and stilled, pinned. The elder stepped forward. "It is done." Vela stood breathing hard, blood dripping from a split lip. She didn't look triumphant. She looked unshaken, steady. Kale moved toward her without thinking. "Vela." She turned to him, not to pin, not to boast, but to look at him. "I don't need to win to keep you," she said softly. "But I won't let anyone try to take you." He stared at her, speechless. And then he nodded, and everyone else did too. That night, the Vale was quieter than usual. The drums had faded. The warriors had dispersed. Even the whispers had died down. Only the fire remained, flickering in low stone basins around the central clearing, casting long shadows up the trunks of the great trees. Kale sat at the edge of the spring where he had first met Vela. The water shimmered under the moonlight, faint plumes of steam curling into the air. His fingers traced absent circles in the warm surface. She had fought for him, not because she had to, because she chose to. He didn't know how to process that. In his world, people didn't fight for each other without contracts, promises, or some price. And yet Vela had stepped into the circle not to claim him, but to defend a choice she believed he hadn't made yet. She'd risked everything for maybe. He heard the soft padding of her steps before she spoke. She never hid herself from him. Never needed to. "You didn't come to the fire," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure I should," he replied, not turning. "Because of what I did?" "No. Because of what it meant." She stepped beside him, crouched low, her tail wrapping around her feet. She didn't touch him. Not yet. "You don't owe me anything, Kale," she said. I fought because I felt the bond. Not to pressure you, not to trap you, just so they wouldn't scare you away before you could decide for yourself." He turned to look at her. Her fur was still damp from where she'd cleaned her wounds. A bruise darkened one side of her ribs, but her expression was calm, unflinching. "Why me?" he asked. Her ears tilted slightly. "Because I smelled you before I saw you, and it felt like the trees remembered you, like the fire beneath the earth exhaled. That sounds like belief. Like fate." "No," she said softly. "It was familiarity. Like you belonged here. Before either of us knew why." Kale let the silence stretch. Then he said, "I'm not a fighter. I'm not a warrior or a mate or any of the things they expect." Vela finally moved closer, her hand brushing his. "I don't want who they expect. I want you." He stared down at her fingers curled beside his own. And then quietly he said, "Then maybe I stop running." She exhaled, slow and steady. And together they sat beside the spring, as the wild slept around. Them, no longer flame and outsider, but something quietly becoming whole. The days that followed were unlike anything Kale had ever known. For the first time in years, he stopped waking to alarms. No ship diagnostics, no contracts blinking on an outdated screen. Just the breath of the forest, the pulse of life around him, and the soft rustling of fur as Vela stirred beside him. He helped repair what little the trial had damaged, rebuilding one of the ash-ring platforms, learning to seal a crack in woven bark the way the flame blood did. They didn't ask for him to prove anything. They just handed him tools. Vela taught him names for the wind. The morning breath of the valley was called Shah, and the one that carried the scent of rain from the east was Torin. Every breeze had meaning, here. Every scent was a memory, and the more time he spent beside her, the more Kale started to understand her without words. The flick of her ears when she was amused, the slow twitch of her tail when she was tense, the way her body leaned into his without thinking when she laughed. But peace doesn't last forever, not when the galaxy doesn't care where you find it. It was during a hunt that the change came. Kale, tracking a herd with Vela and two of her packmates, silent through fern-choked underbrush. He knelt to scan hoofprints with his modified device. Still, half-fried from the hot spring incident, but functional enough, The screen blinked once, then again. Signal detected. Not a flame blood frequency. Not Veil tech. Human. Scavenger-class drone. Kale's breath caught. He tapped the screen, narrowing the signal. It was weak, fading fast, but real. A burst transmission. A data relay pulse. Someone had found the planet. Someone was watching. He stood too fast. Vela turned to him immediately. "What is it?" He handed her the device. She stared at the symbols, nose twitching as if scent could confirm what circuits couldn't. "It's not from here," she said darkly. "No," Kale murmured. "It's from out there." She looked up at him, fur bristling. "They're coming." Kale's mouth went dry. "And they're not coming for a visit." The veil felt different now. Not louder, not panicked, just still. A stillness that ran deeper than silence, as if the forest itself sensed the shift, as if the roots were listening. Vela stood before the gathered pack, her voice low but unshaken. Kale stood to her right, arms crossed, his pulse stuttering in, his ears as dozens of eyes flicked between them. Warriors, elders, children. The scent of ash and moss filled the clearing. "They are not traders, not explorers," Vela said. "They send eyes before blades. That is how it begins." The elder with white fur and stone feathers stepped forward. "And what have the eyes seen?" Kale lifted his scanner. "A signal burst. Simple, unencrypted, likely a scout drone. But if they think there's something here, energy readings, resources, then a full crew won't be far behind." Another packmate growled. "Let them come. They'll bleed before they breach the ridge." "No," Kale said, stepping forward. "That's what they expect. The moment you bare your teeth, they'll use it. Justify force, paint you as wild, dangerous." Vela nodded. "He is right. If we fight with fury, we give them the excuse they need." "Then what?" Drek snarled from the edge of the crowd, still bandaged from his loss but unbowed. "Wait and hope. They leave?" Kale met his eyes. "No. We confuse them." The murmur stopped. Kale turned toward Vela, and she gave him a slow nod. An unspoken trust between them. "They rely on patterns," Kale said. "If we break them, jam their scanners, distort their signals, manipulate what they see, then they won't be able to understand this place, and fear will do more to drive them out than any blade." The elder was quiet for a moment, then finally said, "We will give you what you need. But if they step beyond the breath of the trees," his voice grew like fire through bark, "they will not leave." Kale nodded. Neither would he. The days that followed were a blur of movement. Vela's hunters, once silent protectors of the veil, became shadows with purpose. They learned quickly from Kale, adapting his ideas with unnerving precision. He showed them how to scatter broken tech parts to mimic faulty mining beacons. He taught them how to mirror heat signatures from geothermal vents, bouncing them through polished stone to simulate unstable terrain. The forest became a trickster's snare. Vela stood at the center of it all, tireless and focused. She coordinated movements like a conductor, sending runners along route bridges, bark signals pulsing through the trees. Kale watched her with growing awe, how she shifted between command and care, ferocity and quiet. And still, every night, she found time to sit beside him. Sometimes they didn't speak. Other times she asked questions about his old world, the void between stars, the shape of wind and ships that could breach atmospheres. He answered them all, even when it hurt. One night, while tracing a false heat trail for the 50th time, Kale finally asked, "What happens if they don't scare? If they bring more?" Vela didn't flinch. "Then they force our claws. And you're ready for that?" Her eyes were glowing faintly in the firelight. "I was born ready, but you weren't." Kale looked away. "No, I wasn't." She placed a hand on his. "But you're still here," and that mattered more than either of them could say aloud. The first sign of contact came on the third day, a thunder.